Welcome to Middle School Walk and Talk, a podcast series offering heart, hope, and health to members of our middle school communities. Hosts Phyllis, Fagell, and Jessica McGuire talk all things self-care, student well-being, school culture, and more. Middle School Walk and Talk is designed to support the concepts found in the successful middle school, This We Believe, and is a production of the Association for Middle Level Education. To learn more, visit amle.org. Today's episode, Dust Off the Mission, Building Trust and Accountability in Middle Schools with guest Jen Cort.
Hi, this is Phyllis Fagell, and I'm so excited because I'm here with my co-host, Jessica, and today we get to interview someone who I not only admire as a professional, but I also am happy to call a friend. Jen Cort has joined us. Jen, before we ask you a million questions, could you just tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, well, the feeling is mutual. I'm honored that you call me a friend. I am a part-time high school counselor. I've been a middle school principal. I've been a counselor in lower middle school, all levels of administration. I'm the incoming head of school at Friends Meeting School next July. And I'm the author of an AMLE book that I'm very proud of, Hubs, and host of the podcast Third Space with Jen Cort, which I'm so grateful you've been a guest on.
First of all, congratulations on the new job. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
Does that you don't get a summer off at all?
Well, I don't start till next July, so
Okay.
I have a year, and there'll be some transition work, but it's nice to be able to have a year, so I'm very grateful for that.
That's great. Well, speaking of back to school, one of the topics that I know is on my mind is everything going on that is just polarizing society, that is making it difficult for teachers, for administrators, for kids themselves to know what's okay to say, what's not okay to say, what will maybe offend a parent or even a colleague. And everything has been turned a little bit upside down. And I know you do so much work in that world.
Mhm.
What are you seeing? Has anything that you've been advising in the past changed? Or do you have any new advice related to this new situation we find ourselves in?
It's the same advice, but it's become more crystallized. We can disagree with each other. We should disagree with each other. It's not healthy for kids to be in spaces where all the adults in their lives have all the same opinions and values. If that was possible, it would not be a healthy situation. So we can and should disagree with each other. Schools have this beautiful thing that we don't use enough. And if I had a nickel for every time I said the following word, I would be a very wealthy woman. We have missions, and our mission is what we stand on, and it is the boundaries beyond which we cannot go. And the vision is what we strive for. So we have the mission. Now, where it gets tricky and where it's become more crystallized for me is we don't know what the mission looks like and sounds like in action. How do I know if what I say is within the mission or outside of the mission? What do I do when I'm in that situation? And I hope all administrators will open that conversation with their teams, but if they don't, I encourage all teachers, and I'm an administrator, I encourage all teachers to say, hey, I need to know what is outside of the bounds. The number one question I'm hearing from teachers all over the world is, I don't know if you'll have my back because I don't know what it looks like. So that's on the teacher side. Then on the classroom side, it's important to have the conversation with students about what is the mission, how does the mission look, sound, and feel in our classroom. How can we disagree, how far can we go, what do we do when we hurt each other, what is our ethos around mistake making? That's really what I've been focusing on the last few years. And as I said, it's starting with the recent election, and then even more so now, people are needing those really specific, concrete tangibles that administrators can provide and teachers can provide for their students.
What are some of those practical strategies that have been working that you've been seeing work in school?
Talking about mistake making is the biggest. I mean, we have this really interesting relationship with mistakes. We encourage our students to make mistakes. We tell them it's part of growth and learning. But the adults in the spaces, and I mean, I'm thinking of parents, and that means everyone who's taking care of a child. So the broad term of parent, administration, and teachers, we don't have the same grace with each other. We don't have the same elasticity with each other. And so really thinking about what happens when I make a mistake. The other thing is I think in my dream world, we would all embrace that every time we make a mistake, there's something we have to take ownership for. So I think of it as a 10-90 rule. 10% of my time, energy, and words should be attending to my intentions and saying what my intentions were, and 90% of my time, energy, and words needs to be attending to the harm caused. And that needs to be mutual. It's for teachers, it's got to be both ways, how they're working with students around it and how they'll be supported with parents and administrators. And this is the best time because you can articulate that to your family, saying, this is what our mission is. Here's what we mean. Here's where you can't go beyond. Here's how we want to work in partnership, how we're going to help your kids grow through this. But we're very clear on that we're not going outside of the mission.
I love that. And I think something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially as I try to figure out which news sources I can trust, try to figure out where is the accurate information. And then you have AI on top of that. Forget the legacy media, you have things showing up in your feeds. And I don't have nearly as many feeds as our students have. And I know that I'm having trouble knowing what's true and what's fiction. And I'm sure that kids are as well. And it influences how they view things. How can we approach kids in the coming school year to help them make sense of all of the confusing information and misinformation that they are being exposed to?
Yeah, it's so hard. And it's when I'm working with students, I always come back to what is their motivator. And I tell them how these algorithms are designed to manipulate you. That's their whole purpose. And they help us in some ways and they hurt us in some ways. And so one of the biggest factors, and I talk about this with my advisory, is what is the question? Think of a question you want answered and then get multiple answers to it. Too often they're getting information, and I'm using information really generously here, that isn't to a question that they're wondering about. And so it just starts to filter in. So having them really think about what is it I need to know and why do I need to know it? And then have multiple answers to it. Just like I tell them, I'd hope that they'll ask many adults their opinion on things and get different opinions. That's always the best way to make a decision, and then decide for themselves they should do the same with their sources. That's really easy to say, harder to do. I think you have to model it with them and have them show you what they're doing. So even having them walk through something, depending on your school's rules, some schools will allow that and some won't. If they don't, then you can easily find a video on YouTube about how you can walk through reliable sourcing. But the other thing is that doesn't really get at your question, but it gets to the other side is how are you taking care of yourself? Like, how are you feeling about yourself? And, you're a counselor, moving beyond self-care, but really thinking about, okay, if I'm on a team, I have to eat a certain number of calories, I have to sleep a certain number of hours. What am I doing to make that happen? So really thinking about what's motivating them and build back from there.
And maybe encourage them to manipulate their algorithm. At this point, I have mostly puppy videos in my feed.
I have a lot of baby elephant videos. And I did that, and to your point, I did that on purpose. I was getting overwhelmed. I went down a rabbit hole and one of my students had suggested, so I started looking up rescued baby elephants, and now they're all over my feed. So kind of proud that I reversed the manipulation and hadn't thought about it in that way. So thank you for giving me that thought.
I love that.
I do too. I'm still kind of ruminating on your talk about the mission and like what the school stands for, and I think what you were saying is like be intentional and have clarity around that. And I think probably for some of our listeners thinking about their school's mission, maybe it's coming up for them. Our mission isn't really like the walk we walk. Like,
Yeah.
it's words on the wall.
Mhm.
So, and I think what you were saying, part of that is be really clear and intentional with your mission, and that it supports who you want to be as a system, and that it supports the community in which you live,
Yeah.
and be clear with them about what that is. I think sometimes even if maybe you need to rewrite your mission with your team, and really do some searching of who are we and who do we want to be. But also, I think if you're living in a school and working in a school where you have a strong mission and your values are very clear, sometimes it's still hard for teachers to have meaningful conversations with students because they're afraid to say the wrong thing, right? What advice do you have for teachers who want to have those meaningful conversations and feed into the school's mission, but they're just afraid to say the wrong thing?
Yeah. Is it okay if I address the first part first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've worked with, I don't know, over 350 schools. I've been in two schools that most people can tell me what the mission is. Most people in schools don't know what it is. It's a
Yes.
fluffy thing that's out there, but it's really hard to argue when you're working within the mission. So that's why I'm saying dust it off. It's what you have now. It's so dust it off and then look at what does it look like and sound like. But
I will
most
attest to that as a principal. Like, it's very easy to say to a parent in a tough conversation, listen, here's what happened, and here's our response. And that's because that's what we say we're going to do. We're going to do what we say, right? And there's not a lot of pushback on that
yeah,
if you've communicated that and lived that. You're
yes.
Yeah, I have lived on both sides of that, not having
Yeah.
that and having that.
In my dream world, in my dream school, every communication we sent home would have consistent with our mission hyperlink. We are doing the following. So it's an education that everybody needs. And it's a great way to start the year, having those conversations with parents at back to school night and others. For teachers who are struggling to have conversations, first of all, you're not alone. I would say that's most of us. I mean, I do this all day, every day, and I've been in education 35 years, and I still have conversations that make me nervous and uncomfortable and wonder what parents will say about them. I think there are a couple of things with it, though, that one, make sure you know what the boundaries are. But a lot of times when kids are having conversations or there are things that they need to talk to us about, what they really want is for us to listen. In fact, I've asked thousands of students about the four phases of listening, one being I can tell you exactly what you said, like a transcript. Another being I can tell you what you said in my own words and I nuance it, but you feel like I got it. Third being I've attached feelings to it. And fourth being I'm going to fix it. And I've asked thousands of students, and universally, they say, I want you to hear it, put it in your own words. It doesn't matter, but just I need to know that you got it and I need you to care about it. I do not need you to fix it. And in fact, what we know is that a lot of times, if we help them feel seen and heard, they can come up with solutions or ideas to try and then bring those ideas back to us. But most adults are listening to respond. So the number one thing would be just listen. And then Phyllis has heard me talk about this at all over the place. But when you're nervous, when you start to feel that nervousness acting up, we tend to fill space with words. We go on and on, and nobody's listening. So just use one sentence. If something's said that makes you uncomfortable, just use one sentence. It can be as simple as, I didn't talk about that when I was growing up, so I'm learning. Let's talk about how we learn together. I mean, it can be that simple. But for the most part, and I've been in some really challenging situations where students are saying they will not talk to an adult in the school. And the reason they talk to me is not because I have some magic wand or anything like that, though that would be fun. It's because I say what matters most to me is what you think and what you feel, and I listen to them. So that's the biggest one. But then I also think it's really important at the end of a conversation to ask the student what their takeaway is from that conversation, even asking like if you were to describe this to somebody else or to yourself later, what would you say so that you can clarify things? Not in a defensive way, but conversations meander. And so just having that check-in can be really helpful. It also shows that you're trying to really get what they're saying.
Yeah, and it builds trust.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
kids really just wanna know we care and that they're listened to, and
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm seeing some through lines to other conversations on the podcast Phyllis and I have had where Jack Burkmeyer said to teachers, "Slow your roll."
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially what you're saying, like, take a minute and you don't have to problem solve
Mhm.
necessarily, you just have to listen because they wanna know you care and then they're heard, and I think about, the recent students of the AMLE sound off contest. And
Mhm.
when I listened to that episode, I think every one of them in one way or another said, quote, I finally feel heard. I
Yeah.
finally feel like someone listened.
Yes.
So it could potentially be just that simple when
Yeah.
I think you're right, we make it much more complex in our minds.
And two things to build on that is one, to bear in mind that when we're listening to fix it, what we're saying to them is, I don't think you can handle this without me.
Oh,
Right? That's the right.
we're
So then,
taking their power.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then why shouldn't they depend on us for everything? But then the other thing is, and this may seem really rudimentary, but really important at the start of the year, learn your students' names and the pronunciations and use them correctly for the correct student. And I say that because I can't tell you the number of times there'll be a couple of students of color in the class who tell me that they're called each other's names all the time, and for so many reasons. Knowing somebody's name is just one of the most intimate things we can do when we first meet them. So even saying, I'm learning your names and I might mess up, and again, let's go back to our ethos on mistakes, but use learn their names, use their names, and figure out tricks. Have them help you. I have students help me all the time. I'll say, like, I'm trying to figure it all out, what can I do? And they'll remind me. One student said, we could have a candy thing if you mess up. And so I brought in candy, and if I messed up, they got it. So they're just small things, but big things.
Candy fixes a lot of problems, doesn't
Candy
it?
does.
Candy.
Jolly Ranchers, the currency of counselors.
For sure. Actually, that's a really good segue to a question I have about students.
Mhm.
It's really hard for us as adults to, own our mistakes without getting defensive or without that fear that we're being judged and that we won't find our way back to being in their good graces. And
Mhm.
I see that a lot with students as well, minus the perspective and the years of experience. And it can be really, really hard for students to come back, particularly because other students might not be forgiving.
Yep.
And that has been a consistent challenge over the last few years, especially for things that are identity based in some
Mhm.
way. The kids have this sense of it is irreparable harm, that there is no way back. How do you work with students when they make a mistake that hurts one of their peers and they're also being canceled by their classmates?
Yeah, it's twofold. I mean, I always think of prevention and then response in the moment and reflection. For prevention, I wish everyone would develop co-construct agreements with their students. And AMLE has on the website a blog that I wrote about how to do that, that there's like a framework for it. So really thinking about that, but then name all the kind of mistakes that could be made. It's important for students to hear if a teacher say, like, if somebody says something that's racially harmful or gender harmful or learning style or whatever it is, so that they know that it's not just a mistake, but these are all the ways in which we could hurt each other. So when I'm co-constructing agreements, I don't ask them, what do you think we should do in this moment? Because that's really hard. I ask them, what do you think a seventh grader in another school should be doing in this moment? So you think about it in that distanced way, and then work through the agreements. If you do agree, make them and use them. If you make agreements, and they're often referred to as norms, I'm really trying to not use norms because it's very much saying fit into this culture instead of being able to show up who you are. Um, the thing that I find all the time is that if many schools make agreements, but they don't talk about how they'll handle them when they're breached or tested, because they will be. And they need to talk about that in the abstract. What will we do? So name all those things. Do we cancel each other? Do we, if it goes back to previous harms, what do we do? So they're working through those. That can take 5 minutes and it can take 55 minutes to have those conversations. I prefer the smaller snippets. With the bigger harms being caused, what I hear from students regularly is what adults want to do is make it go away. So they want to be able to have a student say they're sorry and another student and they say they're sorry, but it's not over and it doesn't go away. That's a great way to erode trust with students. So instead, saying, like, this is going to take some time to work out, but we're going to get to a place where we can be okay in the same space with each other. We might not ever like each other again, but we will be able to be okay in the same space. So you let them know that ahead of time. And then bring in your experts, bring in counselors, bring in colleagues who are not intimately involved, bring in another teacher who can provide a frame of reference, if you're part of the situation, then it's really important to have somebody else there. And even telling students we all need help sometimes. So I'm here having somebody here to help me brainstorm. Having somebody you can go to and just say, I totally messed up and have them validate you. But we need to be really mindful of where we are with that and not try and talk them out of their feelings. So often when they write each other off, it's because the harm has been happening for a while and it hasn't been addressed. And we try and talk them out of their feelings, or we don't create spaces to really validate it. So thinking about what your mission is, here's how we agreed to treat each other, and knowing they're going to mess it up. They have to. They're middle schoolers. That's their job, is to push against boundaries. So, and then having patience with yourself. Also, if it's a mistake that happened around you around identity, let's say somebody says something racially harmful to another student, you need to do your own work. So if it's something that you didn't catch in the moment, make sure to, it's like, oh, that was about race. Well, then that's what I need to be thinking about and learning about. But the one other thing I would say in the reflection in the moment, is to let students know ahead of time, if something happens and it doesn't seem like I get it, you can tell me, you can tell somebody else. Always name other people they could go to, but make sure that they know that they can tell someone, because a lot of times we don't get it. It doesn't apply to us, so it doesn't have the same impact, or we're in a hurry. Great. The best way for our biases to flourish is when we're in a hurry. Or we don't know how to handle it. So if we put students in that position, then they feel like we're in partnership a little bit more so, and they know they have other people to go to, and it's good modeling for them. But it's also just modeling when you mess up, learning about it. I mean, I've got episodes on my podcast where I've gone on and said mistakes I made, where other people have. There's a whole episode on mistake making, because it's so important that we model this for students in a really healthy way.
Yeah, and it's so important to keep it real and
Yeah.
just listening and not making empty promises. You are
Yes.
a good point, Jen, of why I think former school counselors make the best administrators, because so much of the work that you're doing, especially when things are really charged emotionally, does come back to reflective listening and a lot of the skills that you learn in the course of becoming a counselor.
Yeah, when I became a principal, people said, how did you go from counseling to administration? Which I didn't. There were things in between. But I was like, I don't know how you're an administrator and not a counselor. Like that's an amazing thing. One other piece, just on the when these things happen and they want to cancel each other, is make sure you have language around time, because it's usually on a Friday afternoon, or right before a break. So make sure you're saying to students, we are going to work through this. Let's talk about what we can say over the weekend, or what we're going to do. Call parents and say, we're in a situation, we're going to figure this out. We're going to work together. We need you to not try to, we need it to not get worse over the weekend. But be really mindful of time, especially if you're rushing from class to class. Even saying to a student, I need you to check in with me at the end of the day, helps you and helps them to anchor in space.
That's such good advice as we are about to start a new school year. I know we have a mutual former colleague who always starts the year as a middle school head by telling parents, when at back to school night, when we call you because your child lied, cheated, hit somebody, I hope you'll partner with us. And what you're talking about is really setting the expectation from the very beginning that we're all going to mess up and there will always be a way back. But in order for that to happen, we have to be good listeners. We have to keep it real. And we have to make an effort to learn from whatever mistake we've made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, your mission has things in it. Like I said, I could, if I had a nickel, but like if your mission says something like we want them to always enjoy learning, whatever, better language than that, but we want them to be lifelong learners. I know it's kind of 90s cliche, but we have that language still. Then part of that is learning how to handle things when you mess up, and letting parents know that too.
Yeah.
Can I add the number one thing I wish teachers would do at the start of the year?
Yeah.
Or it's what I wish they wouldn't do. Don't ask them what they did over the summer.
Oh, yes. Some kids didn't have a good summer.
That question, it forces them to lie, or to be boastful, or to reveal their socioeconomic status or their family constellation or whatever. Like, just please don't ask them what they did over the summer. Think
So
of
it creates a lot of inequity.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a really good reminder.
I do
Also,
like
don't ask colleagues because colleagues are in the same situation.
true. All humans.
Yeah.
Oh, I do like that reminder, and that's important as we go into this new school year.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time to talk with us. I'm sure we will bring you on again. You always have so many great practical tips to share. And it might seem intuitive, but I think a lot of what you're saying, we tend to forget in the midst of everything else that's on our plate.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and it's a real privilege to be on it. So thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.